Late last year, the 400Thunder series burst into life as the top levels of Australian drag racing came together to create a new era on the 400-metre racetrack. Across the nation, we've had a summer of fantastic action and fierce competition. The fans are loving what they're hearing and seeing, and more importantly, feeling. And it only gets better from here. Very tough racer, and he goes red on the tree. It's 003. This week, the 400Thunder series comes back to Sydney, and it's the turn of the men with ice water in their veins. The nitro-fueled warriors of Top Bike. Oh, we got a race on our hands, and Porter takes it. Coming into this event, Mark Drew is leading the way. He's got a slight lead over Chris Matheson, but Chris Porter is also breathing down their neck. Greg Durack, Ben Stevens, Les Holden, Terry Burnett and Steve Badcock round out your top 8.
Yeah, well, these top fuel bikes are really something special to muscle down the track. There's absolutely no comparison from my old bike to this bike. We have done runs that have been in similar sort of speeds and times, but the handling of the bike is just so different. It's an animal. I'm going to say it's like riding a bike. Once you know how, you know how, but I don't know how yet. So we'll just keep poking along steady and hopefully, yeah, we'll get a handle on it. All the other races have been really good. All offer their help when they can, and yeah, it all helps.
Mark, Willowbank wasn't a happy hunting ground for you, was it, last time?
Yeah, no, we blew up in the qualifying, and then the eliminations, we sorted it out, and it started raining, so we got rained out. So it was a bit of a non-event.
But come Sydney, a very, very different set of weather conditions here this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is very different. I didn't get the data out of my bike that time, so I'm sort of guessing again. Hopefully find the track this time and get a bit of data and make it go a bit faster next time.
What's really been exciting about this weekend, Mark, is to chat to a couple of the other guys in the category that are just starting out. They're at the complete opposite end of their top bike career, and they've had really great things to say about the camaraderie of the category.
Yeah, no, you know, I try and pass on as much knowledge as I can. You know, the more competitors, the better. You know, and there are a few new bikes coming along, which, you know, they are good bikes. So hopefully, the fellas get a handle on them, and you know, get a few good competitors out there.
Top Bike has been sensational this year, and the first qualifying session that was on earlier on this morning, no different. Chris Porter currently your #1 man with a 684. Mark Drew in right behind him with that 693, and a whole host of other tough racers in behind him. We're going to pick up the action now, heading into the second and final round of qualifying. The first pass that we will see is our current #1 qualifier and reigning national champion, Chris Porter.
Yeah, well, Willowbank, we got runner-up against Chris, you know what I mean? He's always hard to beat, but I beat him in Adelaide, so, you know, we're getting there. We've added more fuel for the track because the track seems to be really good today, so we had a bit more fuel and a bit more clutch for it, and we're just stepping up on it, see how we go.
No one expected the heat for today. It's such a warm day earlier in the afternoon. Hey, I mean, was that something you anticipated?
Yeah, no, not really. After yesterday, we were watching I was watching the temperature in the air and all that yesterday at the same times we're supposed to be running, just to let the boys know what we're going to have for today, sort of deal. And it stayed, the heat stayed. It just sort of didn't drop off. You know, we thought it was going to, by this time of the afternoon, she would have cooled off a lot, but it's good.
Yeah, well, it has dropped off now, and it's really when the action's really going to heat up later on, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. I just hope it stays around warm enough for that last one, because the air's going to probably be around 500 or 600 feet. We're going to be making ridiculous horsepower. As long as the track's there, things are going to really boogie.
Horsepower is not usually a problem that these guys have. They make it in spades, but it's getting it down to the racetrack that is generally the problem for most of these motorcycles. You can see a lot of tyre under the back of them. And Porter on a very nice pass until quarter track. The bike just got a little bit untidy. He's already the #1 qualifier, provisionally that is, heading into this second round of qualifying. 784 will not improve him at all, but for a very, very early shut-off, that was a pretty nice run. You can see it left well, it was riding the wheelie bar, and it just made a little bit of a dance at around about quarter track, and Chris said, you know what, let's get out of the throttle. We've got nothing to gain. We've already run in the 6-second zone this weekend, and we'll save it for the first round of racing. Beautiful riding style for Chris Porter. He gets his feet up on the pegs, it hits the wheelie bar, and that's exactly what you want when you're riding one of these top bikes. And now we move on to Chris Matheson, a multi-time former national champion on a bike that has probably got the most potential of any motorcycle in this country, bar none. This is the Nitro Voodoo bike, and it is a sensational piece of machinery. He has had a few ups and downs with it, though. Came off this motorcycle a few years ago here in Sydney at over 230 miles per hour. It was an epic crash, and just to have the guts to step back on one of these motorcycles is sensational in itself. But they put together a whole new engine combination for this bike. It is making massive horsepower compared to their previous program, and that's really setting this bike up for big things. Chris Matheson has made no secret of the fact that he wants to run in the 5-second zone. That is the goal. He wants to be the first 5-second bike in Australia, and it certainly has the potential to do it. On the other hand, we've got Rod Barchett on the other side of the racetrack, the Suzuki. More of a funny bike style of motorcycle. It is a nitrous-assisted bike, this one, so a very, very different combination to Chris Matheson, but still, nonetheless, a very potent machine. You can just see that horsepower from Matheson. It blew the tyre off right at the hit of the throttle. An 8.17, he shut it off very, very early. Rod Barchett, only a 9-second pass for him. Both bikes having some trouble here. And we've got some changing conditions compared to what we saw in the first session. It might be catching a few of these guys out. Chris Matheson just straight up in tyre smoke, and that is the problem that they've had with that bike all season long. Trying to get the thing hooked up off the start line, it is just making so much horsepower, and the challenge for this team is getting the clutch and the driveline set up to match that horsepower. And that is the eternal struggle when you're riding one of these nitro-fueled motorcycles. Let's have a look at Rod Barchett as he leaves the start line here. There was a little bit of a bobble just off the start line, and I'm not sure what happened. It didn't really turn the tyre. Oh, a lot of flames out of the pipe, maybe backfiring a little bit there, and that is not what you want to see out of a nitrous-assisted motorcycle. Pair of Harleys to round out this second round of qualifying and the final pass for qualifying. We've got Damien Muscat, who we saw make his debut at the Sandoz Super 3 Extreme Drag Race up at Willowbank Raceway, the last time that we saw these bikes out for the championship. And then we've got Mark Drew, who's had a pretty challenging couple of months, it has to be said. Absolutely lunched an engine up at Willowbank at the Sandoz Super 3 Extreme Drag Race. They had to replace the engine in that bike. They got it sorted. It got down the racetrack, but still, anytime you see parts carnage in one of these motorcycles, it does mean plenty of work for the crews to do between rounds. Now, we talk about Damien Muscat. This bike has got some sensational potential. If it runs to its full potential, it can stick with Mark Drew every single inch of this drag strip. It is one tough bike. He brought it in from the US, still getting a handle on how to ride it, but he's already been in the 6-second zone at over 200 miles per hour. To put that into the old speak, you're looking at over 320 kilometres per hour. Both riders set themselves for the violent launch that is Top Bike. Problems for Mark Drew here. He pedals it. Look at the front wheel in the air at half track, but Muscat rides around him a 696, only 283 kilometres per hour. That speed is way down. That says to me he was off the throttle well before the finish line. Let's have a look at what happened to Mark Drew here. The bike looked like it was just heading for the wall right from the get-go, and there it is, puff of smoke from the rear tyre. Just too much horsepower for this Sydney Dragway 400-metre racetrack. But I tell you what, for Damien Muscat, that is a very, very nice run in the 6-second zone. In fact, it's the quickest run that we've had in this second round of qualifying, a 696. Sensational run from the Queenslander. And I dare say that Mark Drew will probably be doing some homework between rounds, trying to get that motorcycle sorted out. He did a great ride job on it too on the far side of the racetrack with that front wheel way up in the air. But this is the way they will head into eliminations. Chris Porter, your number one man with the 684. Mark Drew in behind him. Damien Muscat, Rod Barchett, Chris Matheson and Adam Layton rounding out your top 6. Don't go anywhere, because after the break we've got all the action from eliminations here at the 2016 Nitro Champs. So heading into the first round of eliminations, this is the way they will shape up. We have had some withdrawals, though. Unfortunately, Adam Layton and Rod Barchett cannot make the first round of racing. So Damien Muscat will go on a solo pass, as will Mark Drew. But the killer matchup for mine is certainly that matchup between Chris Porter and Chris Matheson. That is going to be a huge one. Before we get to that, though, we need to look at this first race, and it is Damien Muscat. He's going to be going on a solo pass, and this is a great reward for this team. They've started travelling following the series, still only in their first season competing in the top bike class, but Damien Muscat has really stepped up with his riding style, with the technique that you need to ride these motorcycles, and also just the commitment it takes to ride these motorcycles. Not just in terms of on-track commitment, but also the infrastructure that you need to have in place, the transporter, the crew that you need to have, the spare parts and the inventory in the shed. All of those things have a massive impact on how these motorcycles, and any race car for that matter, go down the racetrack. And Damien Muscat's probably starting to learn that. It does take a lot of commitment to run these bikes, and he certainly stepped into the deep end here in Top Bike on a nitro-fueled Harley-Davidson capable of running over 320 kilometres per hour in this 400-metre track. Set for a start. Oh, very healthy flames out of that motorcycle. You could see the flames went out as he had to correct the motorcycle just off the start line, but that is a solid pass, a 724, considering the pedal that he had early on, and he's moving very, very quickly here, Damien Muscat. I'm going to be surprised if he can get that thing stopped. Oh, he gets it stopped just into the sand trap. For a guy who doesn't have a lot of experience on these bikes, that is a sensational ride job to just keep that thing upright and only just nose it into the sand. He was running at over 329 kilometres per hour as he crossed the finish line. You could see the front half of the racetrack, it was very, very ugly, but from then on, he pedalled the motorcycle, gets it right down the centre of the lane. But that's where the fun starts, and that's where it usually starts on these bikes, getting them stopped. You can see he's up on the handlebars, trying to get the weight over that front wheel. The front brake disc is glowing red hot as he tries to pull it up. The parachute came out, it blossomed. All's well that ends well. I think he'll be back to the semi-finals, and now we move on to the marquee matchup of the first round of racing. Two guys that you would not usually expect to be racing off in the first round of racing, and that is this man, Chris Matheson. Now, between these two guys, a lot of experience and a lot of years riding these kind of motorcycles. They've seen just about it all between them. This is going to be a monster matchup, and we caught up with Chris Matheson before this race.
What sort of form are you carrying into this round?
Lousy. we went to Adelaide and we just couldn't hook up down there, so yeah, we're struggling to get off the line. The engine's good and everything else, but we're just struggling a bit with that initial hit off the line, so we're just trying to find the sweet spot at the moment.
We're still not improving?
Atrocious. No, the first one we smoked the tyre again, and then we had a brake issue down the other end, so it was bad at the start and bad at the end, so yeah, not good, but we'll go out and hopefully we can go better.
Well, if you're looking for positives, the bit in the middle was spectacular.
The middle was all right, yeah, it was really good fun actually, but just the start and the finish wasn't pleasant, but I got a nice cold bottle of water down the other end from one of the track officials, so it was worthwhile.
Very different burnout routines between these two motorcycles. Chris Matheson with the big smoky across the start line burnout. And well, for Chris Porter, he generally doesn't even start the bike until Chris Matheson has been reversed all the way back from his burnout, does a short, sharp one, straight into stage for him. This is a big matchup, not a matchup we would have expected to see in the first round of racing. But that being said, it does mean that one of the big hitters is going to go through to the semi-finals here, and it's going to have huge implications in the championship points. Oh, tyre smoke again for Chris Matheson, and Chris Porter is out of here. He's gone, and he takes the win, gets the win light on the Harley side of the racetrack, and, well, Chris Matheson got his hands full as well. We'll check that out on the replay very shortly, but a 688 gets the win light for Chris Porter, and that is a big win in terms of this championship. Chris Matheson out in the first round of racing, and he is filthy with himself. We have to see the replay on this one because I'm not sure what happened. I think it was just, again, too much horsepower off the start line, smokes that tyre, opens the door for Chris Porter, and by that point, Chris Porter is long gone. Chris Matheson pedalled it. Porter came off the throttle before the finish line, but he still had enough momentum to get there. What I'd really like to have a look at is exactly what happened to Chris Matheson as he went across the finish line, because there were a lot of sparks out of that bike. I think it might have even laid over just a little bit. And, well, oh, you can see it's actually bouncing. Wow, that is a sensational ride job for Chris Matheson just to keep that bike upright. Man, oh man, this is going to be a killer replay on board with the 340 km/h bike. Across the finish line, he was pedaling it hard, and as he was bouncing, he's actually rolled into the throttle a little bit, which has accelerated that bounce. When the back tyres come back down, the bike's taken off. That's a great ride job from Chris Matheson just to keep that bike upright. So we move on to our current series points leader. This is Mark Drew, and this is one sensational top bike. I tell you what, all the way from Perth, he is our current series points leader, and he gets a free shot at the racetrack here. And the thing you've got to remember is that we are running the 3-round format here. So essentially what it means is that our 2 quickest winners will move into the A final. Our next quickest winner will go into the B final to take on, theoretically, the slowest of our losers, which we know is going to be Chris Matheson, having 1 paired pass and 2 solo passes in this first round of racing. So we know that it's set up this way, but Mark Drew still needs to run a very, very solid number to get into that A final. It's all about the points here this weekend, consolidating that points lead. And he is on a number. The bike went away a little bit at the top end of the racetrack, but he dips into the 6-second zone, a 6.99, only 270 kilometres per hour. I say only 270 kilometres per hour, but that's well down on what we've expected out of that bike this weekend. We've seen him go over 340 k's an hour in the past, but it sounded like the bike may have dropped a cylinder at the top end of the racetrack, and by that I mean having too much fuel into the cylinder, not getting the air-to-fuel mixture right, and what that essentially does is extinguish the flame inside that cylinder. It takes away a whole bunch of horsepower. Let's listen to this bike. You'll hear the note change. Right there, it goes flat and it sounds very, very ugly. Mark Drew picked it up and he rolled out of the throttle. That's experience coming through, and that is what you need when you're riding these bikes. Our A final will see Mark Drew taking on Chris Porter, and the B final will see Damien Muscat, the Queenslander, taking on Chris Matheson. We've got all the finals action coming up after the break. Don't go anywhere. You are in for one wild ride. So here we are. This is the B final for Top Bike here at the 2016 Nitro Champs at Sydney Dragway. It has been a spectacular event up until this point, and unfortunately the B final is going to be a solo pass for Damien Muscat. Chris Matheson, for whatever reason, cannot make this round of racing. May have even had something to do with that big bounce that he had after the first round of racing. Maybe over-revved the engine. Purely speculation on my part here, but those guys probably don't want to risk it. But Damien Muscat, he can hold his head high because he has been sensational this weekend. In fact, he's been sensational since he stepped onto this motorcycle in Queensland just a few weeks ago. Still a newcomer to the Nitro Fuel Brigade, but he is learning very, very quick, that is for sure. We've already seen him run into the 6-second zone at over 300 kilometres per hour. He'll be looking for a repeat of that kind of performance right here. Oh, it's ugly off the front half of the racetrack. But he pedals it, gets it back into the centre of the lane, and just gets towards the centre line at the top end of the racetrack. He moves over into the other lane, but it doesn't matter at that point. He will take the win in the B final, and he looks like he's got his hands full trying to get this bike stopped once again. He will get it around the turn-off without too many problems, but let's have a look at the replay. The bike left pretty cleanly for the front half, well, at least to the first incremental timer, but he had to pedal it again. It looked like it may have gone up in tyre smoke, or at least tyre shake. Nice clean flame. Yeah, you can see the tyre goes a little bit narrow. It's just spinning it. And that's great reactions from Damien Muscat as well to react that quickly. let the rear tyre settle down, get back on the throttle and get that thing through to the finish line under power. He's still a new rider to this class, but I tell you what, he is showing experience beyond his years. Congratulations to Damien Muscat on taking the win in the B final here at the Nitro Champs. Time now for the A final. This is a massive, massive matchup. It's number 1 and 3 in the points, Mark Drew and Chris Porter. Two of the quickest Harley-Davidsons that we've got in this country, and they will face off for the big trophy here at the 2016 Nitro Champs. Drew all the way from Perth, racing for Perth Harley-Davidson, as he has done for quite some years now. Always a perennial championship contender. He's taking on the man racing for Fraser Harley-Davidson. So it's almost a battle of the Harley dealers here as well. West versus East Coast. This is a great, great matchup. Chris Porter, the reigning national champion in his own right. And he's been knocking on the door of some good performances with this bike. It's just a matter of getting it all the way to the finish line under full power. Mark Drew, on the other hand, we've seen the brilliant performances out of him. It's a matter of getting back to those. The level of performance that we saw from earlier on in the season, can he do it? Oh, Mark Drew is in trouble here, and Chris Porter way out in front. And what a run from Chris Porter. A 6.66. That's the quickest run we've seen this weekend. He's got his hands full in the braking area. Mark Drew's doing his best to get that bike stopped. Oh, man, Chris Porter, that was a wild, wild ride in the braking area, but he will be ecstatic with that. A 6.66 at 305 kilometres per hour. So he actually rolled out the throttle a little bit before the finish line because Mark Drew came through steaming through at 343. Sensational side-by-side race here from these guys. Looking at the slow-mo, Mark Drew, I think, had the similar problem to what he had earlier on in the run. He got way up on the wheelie bar. He actually had to pedal the bike. By that point, it opened the door for Chris Porter, and you can see Porter just rolls out of it before the finish line, but it's enough to take the trophy.
Chris, that is what it's all about, really, isn't it? Certainly is, brother. A satisfying weekend for you and your whole team, right? Yeah, extremely. Very satisfying, mate. Yeah, nice to get a big number in the end. How'd you go with that pass? How did you win that one? Oh, we like we talked about it, the boys and I, you know, and sort of what are we going to do to get out there, and we want to run a good number in the final, and the track's been a bit tricky, so we sort of played with the clutch control for a bit and some fuel, and just yeah, went for it. Some great momentum going into Willowbank, right? Certainly have, mate. Yeah, nothing like that. It's a good start. You're a very, very confident man right now. It's great. Yeah, mate. Well, it's good. You know, we've got the Frasers motorcycles on team, Interfreight Transport, Duncan Foss engine and help us out, man. So we're going in for a win. And get the win he did. With that win, he will stay third in the points, but he's closed the gap massively to Chris Matheson. Mark Drew still leading the way, though, on 451. That's a commanding lead, and it's going to be tough to get around him come Winter Nationals time. One more round of the championship left to go for these guys, and it is going to be an absolute nail-biter in Queensland in June, let me tell you. Congratulations to the Bad Bones Racing team, the Fraser Harley-Davidson team of Chris Porter. That's a sensational effort this weekend, and those guys really deserve every single accolade that comes their way. They earned that one this weekend, and they are looking very, very good heading into the Winter Nationals. On next week's show, we have got all the action from the Pro Alcohol guys. They turned it on in Queensland a couple of weeks ago, and let me tell you, they are going to turn it on here in Sydney. Sensational racing from the Blown Alcohol Brigade, and we always see close side-by-side racing from these guys whenever they come to Sydney. It has been a sensational event here in Sydney, and for all the information regarding upcoming events, point scores, anything you want to know about the series, check out the website 400thunder.com.au. That's all we've got time for, unfortunately, on today's show, but make sure you do come back next week because it is going to be massive. We'll see you next time. This is Rusty Gregory signing off from Sydney Dragway.